Saturday morning as we have some very lovely weather here, at least definitely for today and what looks like for the most part here going forward. So
it feels like fall.
it does officially feel like fall. I helped. I'm a little tired this morning. I helped Nick call the Fond du Lac football game in Hortonville last night, so I got a little bit to bed a little bit late last night. But no, I will admit I wore shorts out there with a hoodie on. That was probably not the best decision as the game was progressing on, but nonetheless. So to your point, yeah, it was definitely feeling a little bit like fall. It felt very much like football weather out there last night.
Well, we're going to have it looks like a pretty nice day today, up into the mid-70s, so that's about as good as we can expect at this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tomorrow, not quite so much, breezy, and then it looks like the 10-day outlook, 2-week outlook is, I think we're going to avoid the frost here yet for a couple of weeks, or at least it looks that way. But we're gonna get close because we're gonna get some down into the low 40s a couple nights here coming up now. So
it's pretty good apple picking time.
I bet, yeah. And now maybe some of those locations I was thinking about when I did the statewide temperatures earlier this morning. I'd imagine maybe here coming up, some of those locations further north might be getting close to that frost because some of them, even today, this morning, they were below 40 degrees even. So,
yeah, when we're talking, we're kind of more here in the south central Wisconsin. As you get up towards, Minocqua and Wausau and up that way, you're definitely have to be on the alert now for frost, probably starting as soon as tomorrow.
Yeah,
up there. But as long as we're here in south central Wisconsin or close enough to Lake Michigan here yet, it's even up in Green Bay or Door County. We have the lake effect working with us here yet for a while. So
it's still good time to transplant perennials.
Okay,
as long as you water them in well.
Okay.
And a lot of people have been having their lilacs rebloom because they were confused with such a long season.
Yeah, and my rose bush continues to, it's still putting out new buds yet.
Yes.
I've done a good job of keeping up on the trimming, and it just continues to want to put out. Yep. So
yeah, the lilacs, they, like you said, Delores, what happened there is that, all that wet weather that we had back in late April, May, June, they leafed out early. And then they got like a fungus on the leaves. A lot of the leaves dropped, and then they started rebudding and regrowing.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
And that's kind of if you watered, or if it happened to be you get the rain, then they started regrowing, and they did. I saw a lot of lilacs blossoming too. Not quite like you get in May.
Spring. No.
But it was kind of interesting.
But a lot of the lilacs lost leaves because the soil was way too wet. I have one two that might not make it because they just need some drainage.
Oh, okay.
And all we had was water for 3 months. Actually, all winter too. So
the very mild winter that we had last year. Yeah.
So it was.
But into mid-July, it was. It's been 2 totally different years this year because we were over wet the first half of the growing season and over dry the second half.
Yeah, we haven't had any real balance. It feels like it's been either heavily skewed one way or the other here at this point. So, it'd be nice to get some regular rain here in the forecast, but it looks like there's a chance tonight. But then after that, it looks like it's just a lot more.
Yeah, there's nothing really, 5, 10, 15% chances for the most part in the next 10-day, 2-week outlook.
Yep.
So we're not going to break this pattern
I don't know
for
what
the
happened,
foreseeable future.
I had a little rain yesterday. I don't know how that happened overnight. My porch was wet.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I did. I did take it as anything substantial or that was anything that would have.
My rain gauge got wet.
Got wet, but didn't actually measure anything. Yeah, I should invest in a rain gauge, but I could tell even that because it's like, this is clearly just was a quick shower, and that's it. So, well, I assume Rademann's is still open today, Ron?
Yeah, Rademann's is open today, and I would imagine it's pretty busy. I didn't get out there this morning before the show. Some mornings I do, some mornings I don't. It just depends what I all got going on. But
of course.
So I wasn't there earlier, but I'm, when you get a nice weekend like this, for the most part, you want to take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And today is going to be the enjoyable, fun day of the week, and then tomorrow will be a nice work day. So, yeah. So yeah, open today until noon, and you can stop on out and visit the gang, and they'll help you through your questions. Maybe have the answers, maybe not. Hopefully.
Yep.
So
at least probably set you on the right direction, most likely.
Yeah.
So
well, and sometimes it can be a little more technical. Well, then,
of course.
Then they give me a call and get a third opinion or something. Doesn't always mean it's the
right one.
The right one, but sometimes it's always nice just to have another opinion.
Well, we've had a lot of questions on fungus, and there's really not much you can do for it this late.
Right. It's one of those things that you have to try to be preventative early on, right, in the growing season, essentially. And if you're not, then...
all my apples are just covered with fungus.
Ooh.
And the Golden Delicious is doing the best. They're the biggest they've ever been. And my Rome apples are 2-inch, and they're 30 feet apart. It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, so, that's the joy of gardening.
That's right.
It never does make sense.
Yeah.
You get lots of surprises.
Yeah, and just when you probably think you have it figured out, that's when there's curveballs, and you're like, wait, what?
Right. The last 2 years I had 4 to 5-inch apples on my apple trees. They were just tremendous. And this year I thought with all that rain, they're going to be so big.
Right, yeah.
And 4 apple trees, only one has big apples.
Well, and that could be just the fact that, it was so wet early in the season. It was a little too wet for apple trees. And so if you have 2 apples side by side, and one is on the uphill side and one is on the downhill side, the one up the hill would probably do better in a tough spring, in a wet spring. And
all right, I tell you what, we will step aside and take our first break. You're listening to Landscape Smart, presented by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company.
So yeah, as we said earlier, Rademann's is open today, and you can still get a delivery if you want to do some shredded bark installation or anything like that. 920-922-7612, or stop on out just 3 miles south of Fond du Lac, east on County B.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, yes, we are taking our quick break right here, but I'll bring you on out of the break, and you can ask your question, okay?
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Welcome back to Landscape Smart, presented by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company. I'm Matt Hinker, and joined by Ron Rademann and Master Gardener Delores. Phone lines are open for your questions, 923-1450 or 1-888-900-1450. Can't give us a call? Shoot us an email at kfizstudio@gmail.com. And I tell you what, we'll turn it right to the phone lines right now. You're on Landscape Smart with Delores and Ron. Go ahead with your question and name.
Good morning. My name is Faye, and I am wondering when I should trim the buds off of my hydrangeas. I have 2 large hydrangeas that are about 6 feet tall, and I have a 4-foot tree.
Well, with hydrangea flowers, if it's not like weighing down, I like to leave them on just because they look kind of interesting in the winter. Just
beautiful.
If you get a little, like
a
frost
little snow,
on them or a little light snow. But you do have to be somewhat careful, and sometimes it's best even just to take some of the flowers off now and leave some for later. And because you're almost going to always have to retrim it again in the spring. Hydrangeas, for the most part, the tips die back, so those flowers you'll be cutting those off eventually. So if you do trim it now, you'll probably end up retrimming it again in spring. So that's why I typically either leave most of them on or half of them on, and then plan on trimming it again in the spring.
Okay, and then do I trim it right very early in the spring so I don't destroy the new flower buds?
Yeah, you'll do it. The best time to do it is it's usually kind of towards the end of April. Okay. And what'll happen is you'll start seeing the buds green up. And once you see them green, then those are going to turn into your new shoots, and those new shoots will get the flowers on them. So if you wait until like towards the end of April, mid-April, end of April, then you'll see those new, and hydrangeas don't leaf out real early. They'll give you plenty of chance. You'll be out in the yard, a lot of some things may even be leafed out already. Some of the cherries or things like that will already have leafed out. So you'll have ample time in the spring. But then just watch for those buds to swell up, and then cut them back at that point in time. That way you won't have any dead stems in there when the new shoots come out.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for the call.
Mm-hmm. Good
Bye.
question. Yeah, you can trim them now. You aren't going to hurt anything, but if you
might just be doing extra work.
It's kind of right. It's just extra work.
Yeah.
Right.
So it kind of depends how many things you all got going on.
Yeah, if you got free time, sure, and I can go for it. Tell you what, we're going to return right back to the phone lines. You're on Landscape Smart with Ron and Delores. Go ahead with your name and question.
Hi, my name is Bob. I'm calling about two things. One is the ball-type shrub. I can't remember what kind it is, but it's a green in the shape of a ball. Can I trim that now?
So it's an evergreen?
Right.
So it might be like a globe arborvitae.
Correct. That's what it is.
Yeah, I don't trim any evergreens at this time of year. They're done growing for the season, so you don't really have to worry about them as far as getting any bigger, but if you trim now, you're going to get some tip burn on it because it'll be a little tender right where you make those cuts, and then it'll brown up. So then what'll happen is you'll end up again kind of duplicating your effort again next spring, because you'll have those brown tips, and then you'll want to trim that brown off to encourage the new growth. So wait until, kind of just like the previous caller, I would wait until middle of April. You could do it probably anytime after April 1st. But so anyway, during the month of April, go ahead and trim it. And arborvitaes start growing much earlier than hydrangeas do. So you could trim it already in early April, mid-April. And then you won't have to worry. Then it'll flush right out off of those same tips, and you won't have to worry about that tip burn.
The problem I have is the snow gets in the middle of it and breaks it apart.
Yeah, you got to kind of get yourself into a cycle on those of trimming them more in midsummer, more like 4th of July, late June, early July. So, I hesitate to tell you to trim it now, but sometimes you do have to trim for the better health of the plant too, because once you miss that opportunity, I know what you mean. If it gets in there, it'll tear it apart.
Right.
So, maybe you want to you could take a half-assed approach. Can we say that?
It's AM ready. You can say that. Unless our callers
and just lightly, trim it back lightly trim it back right now, like you say, for the betterment of the plant, and then you may have to trim it back again in early April, because that probably will turn brown where you made those cuts. And then you got to get yourself onto a cycle where you're trimming it in July, because if you're trimming it the first part of July, first week or two of July, then it doesn't have a chance to grow out so strong and heavy like it is right now. And that way you won't have to trim it in the fall. You'll be trimming it. So once a year, you might have to trim it a couple times now to get onto that cycle, but then trim it again in early July next year, and that way you'll get onto the right cycle. Then once a year in July would be ideal.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is a poinsettia. Now, my wife, we got a poinsettia last Christmas, and she had it outside, and it was doing well. But should that be put in the dark now?
Yes. Until, I think at least 6 to 8 weeks, it should be in a dark place. If you want
Should it be watered?
Oh, yes, you don't want it to dry out.
Poinsettias like water too. So it's growing like in the ground outside.
Well, it's in the pot, but yeah.
Oh, better yet. Well, then it's easy to bring it inside.
So just pick the
Sure.
pot up
Yeah.
and bring it in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, you'll have to continue to water it. I wouldn't know how much. Maybe a couple times a week or something.
Well, just make sure that it feels damp. You don't want it to get waterlogged.
If it's
Okay.
let it dry out a little bit in between, but
Right,
not too
right.
much.
Right. It depends on the size pot you have, how fast
Yeah,
it'll
it's too
water out.
small. Yeah.
So if it's a real small pot, it's going to dry out fast. And if it's in a big pot, it should be okay. But if people have poinsettias in a small pot, when they bring them in, they might want to pull them apart and repot them, check to make sure they're not root bound, and have enough soil to continue growing.
Yeah, if you're going to try to save poinsettias, you should be at the end of the Christmas, then before you take it outside, or if you're planning on keeping it, repot it into a larger pot.
Right.
And that gives it a chance to grow some more new roots, and it'll develop into a better plant, because it'll get root bound if it's in a small pot.
Definitely.
So,
All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for the call.
poinsettias are pretty tricky. it
I've
seems
known
like
people who always get them to rebloom, and other people who can't seem to at all. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's, like I said, they're tricky. You gotta, once you get it figured out, you'll be okay. But until then, take some practice and some experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or you can just head to your local nursery and find one that's in bloom. And
well, that's usually what I do.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't quite have it figured out, and I supposedly have a little bit of a green thumb. But like I said, it can be a tough nut to crack.
Definitely.
So,
yes.
But that's what that's what's the fun
right,
of gardening.
And
Right, yeah.
You can see how they're treating their plants. To see what kind of conditions they're in, how cool it is, how warm it is, how much light.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon me.
So you mentioned moving perennials. When you do that, obviously water after they're moved, but would you recommend watering before you're going to move them or no?
Oh, at this time of year, yes, because my soil is just rock hard.
Right. Yes. A lot of mine
I've
is.
been watering mine pretty good and then dig them out. And I found that, like, I have daylilies that are too big and I want to divide them. So I dug them out and stuck them in a pail and lightly watered them. So now they will come apart real nicely.
Okay.
And then they'll probably be divided into like 6 pots.
Oh, nice.
And then I hold them over. I'm lucky enough to have a nice insulated room that I can keep between 40 and 50. And I will have a lot of plants in there for next year's Master Gardener plant sale.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
For the most part, if you're trying to keep them in your, Delores is doing it a little bit different because she's preparing them to give to others. Let's just say,
Right.
If you have them in your own yard, and you want to divide them, split them up, move them from one spot to another, you'd be better off watering on a day like today, maybe watering again tomorrow, then wait a day or two and then dig them out and move them.
You don't want them too muddy.
If you try watering them and then digging them out, you're going to make a muddy, sloppy mess.
Right, yeah, you'll make a mess.
So if you water them and then just wait a couple days,
right,
and sometimes it takes 2 waterings because
it's so dry.
Because it's so dry right now, and it has to soak down enough, and then you can get a nice little small ball on them, so to speak.
Right.
And at this time of year, even if they're a little bare root, they probably would be okay. But if you can preserve their own little ball of roots, that is still always better than if you just dig them out right now, it's so dry they'll be bare root for sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
The dirt will completely fall off.
it'll just crumble off.
It'll just crumble right off.
Yep.
Yeah,
And you might ruin a lot of them.
yeah, you're going to lose them for where if you water them and then, like I said, wait a day, water them again, and then wait another day or two, and then move them, you'll get about as close to 100% survival as what you can ever get.
Yep. And then of course water after.
And then after you move them, then you're watering them kind of for a different reason, just to make sure that the soil is settled in around them. And
all right, I tell you what, we will take our second break, so do not go anywhere as you're listening to Landscape Smart, presented by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company.
then we'll talk about fertilizing them when we get back.
Ooh.
So, Rademann's open today until noon, Monday through Friday till 4:30. And if you want to stop on out, that's great. We're just 3 miles south of Fond du Lac, just off Highway 41 on County Trunk B to the east.
Talking a little bit of everything here. So,
Well, I was actually going to talk about fertilizing if we're transplanting plants.
that would, because that's what we were discussing.
And like out at Rademann's, we actually have we call it lawn starter fertilizer, but it's available in small bags, and you could mix that in with potting soil or Rademann's shredded black dirt or anything like that too. And if you're only transplanting a handful of perennials, I don't know that Rademann's is the best place to go to. We have bulk materials out there for the most part.
Right.
So if you need a bag of potting soil, you're probably better off driving over to Hensy's or Hounsel's or something like that and grabbing a bag of potting soil there. Our shredded black dirt is available it's in bulk, so it's not that easy. Well, you can come out with a tote or something and grab it, but for the most part, that's not what we're all about at Rademann's. But we do have that. It's called lawn starter fertilizer, but it's a balanced fertilizer, and it's in granular, and then you just mix that in with your soil when you're planting or transplanting.
So is it like a 10-10-10 or?
It's what is it? 9-15-13.
Oh, okay.
So it's a higher phosphate, low nitrogen, higher phosphate. So that way you're going to get better root development out of it.
That's what you're looking for. When
Right,
you
you're rerooting,
transplant.
because you don't want it. They don't necessarily need to grow at this time.
Right.
You just want them to reroot.
You want those roots to expand out. Tell you what, the phone lines have lit up here a little bit, so we'll return back to the phones. You're on Landscape Smart with Ron and Delores. Go ahead with your name and question.
Oh, this is George. What's the best time to trim apple trees? I'll hang up and I'll listen.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, with apple trees, what you kind of don't want to do is trim them when they have fruit on them, because you'll get your trimming will get skewed a little bit, so to speak. So usually what works out the best to trim apple trees is more in, March or, late February, March, early April, because then they kind of go back to their normal shape, let's just say. Because otherwise, if you try trimming them at this time of year, some of the branches are bent and they're kind of twisted into each other, and you may end up kind of trimming the wrong one, so to speak, because the apples weigh on them and kind of twist them. And then, but over the course of the winter, they get a chance to, the wind blows them around, they go back to their natural shape, and that way you can space out your branches, because what you want with apple trees is you don't want them to be so full and dense. You want to be able to get the light in there, get good airflow, and if you thin them out, you'll have larger fruit and you'll have less fungus problems if you can get that light and air circulation in there.
You want to trim out the center branches, and then any crossing branches, so they don't rub in the wind and get chafed, and then you get fungus and viruses in the wounds.
Well, and if there's if a branch is rubbing and it's damaged, then you get fruit on it, and that's the branch that's going to break.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So if you have, damaged branches, those are the ones for sure to take off. And sometimes, you do end up with some broken branches or some, just because they got weighted down with, too much fruit on them. So,
All right.
so yeah, you want to, better to wait on that until later in March. You'll have plenty of time.
In spring, yeah.
Yep.
We'll keep it right here on the phone lines. You're on with Ron and Delores. Go ahead with your question and name.
This is Judy, and I have a question about amaryllis bulbs. I've had about 6 of them outside all summer, fertilized lately quite a few times. The bulbs are quite big. Soon I will be putting them in my cool, dark mudroom. When should I repot these? Do I repot them now? They are getting big for their pots, or do I wait until spring?
Well, you want to bring them out basically like Christmas time.
It doesn't matter. I do it. I like to have one blooming and then another one at another time, and that part doesn't matter.
Oh, then I think I would just, when you bring one out, I would repot it.
Okay, so repot when I bring it out.
I think so, because that way it'll have nice loose soil, and you can see if it's root bound. And like Ron said, give it fertilizer to get those roots nice and strong, and a balanced fertilizer so that you get a bloom.
Yes, okay, that's what I was thinking also. So, okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the call.
Yeah, and if you space out that repotting, you'll have, if you could do, if you have 12 of them, well, you do one a month, and then you'll have have a constant.
That would be cool.
Yeah, you have one every month, right?
And those
if you do them all at once, you're going to get the
blossom.
flowers all at once.
Right, yeah.
Whereas if you space them out,
Although one a week in the winter would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be.
Green is always so good for the soul.
Yes, I agree.
Well, and that, maybe that's that's probably a better way to do it than one a month, because you hardly get a chance to enjoy them in April and May, or when everything else is flowering
crabs,
anyway.
Yep.
So maybe you skip,
lilacs.
if you only have 10 of them, you skip those 2 months.
Yep.
So
Keep it for the cooler months.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ron, I got a question for you, because we had a debate a little bit, some coworkers, on what's your take on mulching leaves or just raking and piling them up?
well,
There was a discussion of the possibility, I think, of fungus issues. So,
well, if you have that's kind of the variable right there. If these leaves are damaged and dropped because they were full of fungus, then it'd be actually better to burn them or dispose of them, take them over to the city site or whatever if you're in a municipality, and then let somebody else worry about them. But if you're out in the country, you could burn them, and that would eliminate the spores too. If they're good, healthy leaves and you want to use them for compost, you could mow them and shred them, and then just put them in your garden or pile them up, and they'll be back to good soil in a year or two, just by keeping them.
Yep.
But so it kind of depends on what the status of these leaves are. But if they're good maple leaves that don't have any fungus or anything, I'd compost them. If they were lilacs or some of these others that had a lot of times even like flowering crabapple or apple leaves can have a lot of fungus on them too, especially this so those you probably don't want to try composting, because you're going to keep all that fungus.
Yeah, the fungus will live. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the other group of people who don't want you to rake at all because there's pollinators that winter over in the leaves.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that, actually. Like which pollinators?
Well, different pollinators and different bugs, insects, like the lightning bugs are into the leaves. And I don't...
They use it for insulation, I'd imagine, over winter?
Exactly,
yep.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
I don't do a lot of raking. I have a lot of wind. And so...
Mother Nature takes care of it for you pretty well.
And then it kind of composts around my shrubs.
Oh,
I'll
nice.
have piles of leaves, and I don't take them out until probably June.
Oh, okay.
So give them a chance.
All right.
You do have to be careful, though, too, if you start leaving leaves on your lawn, and then you're getting...
Yes.
Pretty soon you've got lawn issues, because again, they're not getting that wind circulation and light, so you'll smother them and end up with more lawn diseases. So...
Yeah, I have a maple that has leaves that are 5 to 6 inches, and if I leave them, they just mat down like cardboard.
Yep,
and
same.
the grass is gone if I don't get them moved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, same.
Right. It just, and now, we don't really have any, the ash leaves used to kind of be okay, because those would kind of fall in between the grass and shrivel up.
And they were small.
And they were small enough, where now it's, these larger maple leaves don't work quite as well that way.
No, yeah. Like you said, they almost create like a mat or a carpet if you if you leave enough of them, because I have the same thing, those 5-6 inch leaves, and they will absolutely create a layer essentially.
Right.
All right, I tell you what, we'll turn it back to the phone lines. You're on Landscape Smart with Ron and Delores. Go ahead with your name and question. Hello?
Another question. I have had my orchids outside this year. Never did that before. Have been lately fertilizing a lot. One started to bloom outside. I brought it in on my kitchen table. It is just gorgeous. It is bigger and better than ever. So I'm thinking that was good to do. My question now is, when I start bringing these in, they badly need to be repotted. And I should repot them now, shouldn't I, when I start bringing them in? They have many air roots. What is your thoughts on bringing in my orchids?
I'm not an orchid expert.
Okay.
We might have to open the phone lines up to the experts on orchids.
Yes, I have a couple of friends who are very good at orchids.
I'm thinking I have to repot because, but they have so many air roots that I don't know what to do with them also.
Yeah. When you repot, and there's a lot of brown roots in there that are kind of rotting, and those you have to trim out. That's for sure.
Those I would.
And you do want to make sure you buy an orchid mix to use because orchids are not a soil plant. They are a parasite. They are used to growing on bark, on trees in Hawaii or in tropical areas. So they do not grow in soil, and a lot of people make the mistake of adding soil.
And I
to
do
their
have all
orchids.
of that. And I am kind of thinking that I certainly have to repot, but I'm not sure what to do with all these air roots.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, it'd be good if you had people call in. Even
Yeah.
next-
We'll open it up here
you
for the
should-
last 10.
You should call when Patty is on because she is an orchid expert.
Wonderful.
And if she's at home and she's listening, she should call in.
Okay, thank you. All righty, thank you very much.
Thank you for the call. Bye.
Yeah, my gut feeling would be to trim those air roots off.
I don't think so.
But it's hard to and it's just more if they're out and exposed, they're probably not real viable roots. But
There's probably some good YouTubes on how to repot orchids.
Always a good. It's always a good resource for all sorts of things. If you're willing to go out there. Tell you what, we'll step aside really quickly here and take our final break. You are listening to Landscape Smart, presented by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company.
So and speaking of YouTube, we're search for Landscape Smart 24, and you'll find us on YouTube, the past episodes and future ones coming up.
All right, welcome back to the third and final segment of Landscape Smart, presented by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company. I'm Matt Hinker, and joined today by Ron Rademann and Master Gardener Delores. If you got a question, shoot over your phone call right now at 923-1450 or 1-888-900-1450, as we don't have a ton of time, but we can still take a phone call or two. And then if you want, you could shoot an email over at kfizstudio@gmail.com. Yeah, maybe someone will leave, speaking of our YouTube and being on YouTube, maybe someone can leave that knows more about orchids. They can leave a comment on the YouTube, under the YouTube video of this one, saying like, "Hey, I have orchids, and this is what I do when I repot them." So, another advantage for going to our YouTube, going to the YouTube page and watching the videos is the possibility is for the community to interact with each other and help each other field some of those questions that maybe even we cannot field.
On Facebook, there is Mary Stewart, Stewart, and Mary Stewart has a orchid potting service. And so she could comment to Mary and ask her. That's one source.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. I know that can be also a really valuable source as well. So I know nothing about orchids. So.
Well, and that's kind of one of the reasons that we do bring the different master gardeners on, because our master, and when you're whether you're Ron Rademann or a master gardener, you
all have your different expertise.
You have different areas of expertise.
Yep.
And as we talk about, poinsettias and orchids, you're kind of way out of my areas of expertise. I definitely know more about landscape and how to...
And trees and shrubs.
And trees and things, woody plants and, and it's just, and even some of the I'm still learning on the new grasses, the ornamental grasses, the different little blue stems and things like that are coloring up at this time of year. And they come up with, there's new varieties of all the new trees, all the new varieties. So I try to stay up on that more so than trying to move into poinsettias and orchids, for example.
Well, the same thing
it's still fine that we get those questions, and that's
absolutely.
And if anybody has, you don't have to always have a question to call into the show. If you have an answer to call into the show too,
you're allowed to bring your full-on expertise on something as well.
We ask you for your question, but if you have an answer, that's okay too.
Absolutely,
because like I said, we're not experts on every field. So
there's always so many new hybridized perennials and annuals. We just can't keep up on everything. I have a book of 8,000 perennials, and it hardly touches anything that we grow here.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's any of the native plants in there. I mean, it just touches on so little, and it's 8,000 plants.
That's unbelievable.
Oh, it's so good because it's all pictures. It's so good to look at in the
Oh, I
winter.
bet. Yeah, I bet it's just nice to peruse it and see all the beautiful plants.
There's just so many out there. It's hard to know everything.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And, and and so many of them have little quirks to them too, right? That you only learn if you start regularly dealing with them, and then you start having an idea of what to do when you do this or that.
I will buy zone 3 and zone 4 plants, and a lot of them will not work where I live because my clay is way too heavy. And then I have a couple of zone 5 plants that just love it.
Right. It isn't so much that the temperature is always that affects and when they say zones, it's the forecasted or predicted low temperatures for our area.
Mm-hmm.
And it's way more important to match plants to soil and conditions than because if you've got the perfect conditions and perfect soil or the perfect location, you can get by with a zone 5 plant. And if you've got poor conditions, a lot of times the zone 4s or the zone 3s, it doesn't really matter. They won't do well. So when I get a question on which, on some of these, it's almost the very first question I ask back is, where are you from? Are you from Oakfield? Are you from Van Dyne?
Right.
What kind of soil do you have?
And that way I know if, what kind of soils and what it's like, because it's, as you get, in the southeastern side of Fond du Lac, it's all red clay. As you get out towards Rosendale and Ripon area, there's beautiful loam soils out that way. And you go up, the perimeter of Fond du Lac, the Brownsville, Oakfield, Holy Land areas, there it's different again too. And then we get out into the Kettle Moraine, and it's gravelly, and so it's so. Anyway, Rademann's is open today until noon, Monday through Friday till 4:30. We're just 3 miles south of Fond du Lac. You can stop by on your way out to Kelly's here later this morning. But
a good day for the visit them.
So stop by us till noon and then head there right after that.
All right. Excellent, Ron. Delores, thank you so much for coming in on this lovely Saturday morning.